Throughout Penelopiad novel, Penelope presents the other perspective to the well-known epic journey of Odysseus. It is unquestionable that she presents what she believes as the truth and justice, but in reality she also gives a biased retelling of the classic epic. In several occasions, Penelope, to uphold her belief, only presents what she believes instead of the objective truth. As a critical analysis and reflection on the Odyssey, the Penelope itself is a subjective novel just like its counterpart. While some see Penelope as a symbol of justice and truth, she inevitably is a biased human being, just like so many people she described in her narration. In order for us to have a deeper understanding on the epic journey and the legendary story, we should put the novel on trial of justice with an objective perspective before the truth. At the first glance, Penelope presents a refreshing view on the timeless classic. It brings light to all the many inequalities Penelope and other women suffer in the palace. It dives deeper into the plot of 12 maidens killed by Odysseus and brings justice to all the underdeveloped characters in Odyssey. At least that is what most think. But often, truth is buried under the ocean of information. Although there are so many points presented, we shall dig deeper into the book and bring the unnoticed details into light. Penelope in the book has acknowledged that she is a liar herself, just like Odysseus. She says, quote, "The two of us were by our own admissions proficient and shameless liars for long standing." Quote, Penelope is like her husband in a lot of ways. One is definitely her ability of observation and lying when necessary. She mentions earlier in the book about her mother's comment on water, as that when water faces obstacles, it knows how to overcome it without having direct conflict with it. Penelope sure has lived up to her mother's expectation. It is more than evident to say that her words should be examined more closely instead of being taken as the truth. Some readers may also have noticed Penelope's comments on Helen. As a believer of justice, it is impossible for Penelope to not know the different personalities of every human being and reflect on things objectively. But this is simply not the case in Penelopiad. In Odyssey, Helen is portrayed as a beautiful young girl who was ripped from her king. But Penelope sees Helen as the root of all the tragedies that happened to her. To her, Helen is a trump who ran away with another man. Penelope blames her for all the troubles she and her family have been put through, and she continuously ridicules Helen for her vanity and the way she presents herself, especially in the presence of men. I've often wondered, quote, whether if Helen hadn't been so puffed up with vanity, we might all have been spared the suffering and sorrow she brought down our heads by her selfishness and her deranged lust. Quote, Penelope may not be the upholder of justice as we have assumed, simply from her comments to her own sister. When a story is told under certain intention of expressing a perspective, truth is often ignored. Penelope is telling her story and what she believes to be true, even though the truth lies somewhere in between. Seeing the injustice in her life and the fact that she and the maids were treated so unfairly in a patriarchal society, it is more than reasonable to assume that she wants to express her side on the story. But that does not mean her story is the universal truth. No matter what we read, we must always be aware that there will always be bias. While certain sources may be more reliable than others, it is our nature as humans to be biased. This lesson stands true even in the face of the fake news allegations we see today. The Penelope brings up an interesting point that we must always keep in mind. It is always important to hear and take into account different sides of a story, and not rely on just one source or another.